is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 349. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the other line, back in Denver, is Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how goes, sir?
It's going well. I think I'm adjusted from the 16-hour time difference, but if we're being honest, I just got here, went to bed at 10, and then was on a normal schedule from there, so...
Yeah, I wish I was adjusted. I am definitely not yet. Oh, man, I keep going to bed too late and then waking up weird times. I'm still working on it. But, of course, Luis...
I don't even want to know what too late means for you.
Yeah, it's like 5 a.m., something like that. So, yeah, I'm still working on getting adjusted back again. And, of course, the reason why Luis and I are so out of whack is because we were in Australia for the Pro Tour. And Luis, congratulations. I don't know how you do it, man, but you somehow have top-aided 3 Pro Tours in a row. It was really exciting.
Yeah, I am as surprised as you are, actually.
It's just unreal.
It's so funny because, listeners may or may not know this, but I did a lot of losing. I top-aided Worlds in 2011, and before my top-aided Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch earlier this year, I hadn't top-aided a PT. And not only hadn't top-aided a PT, I went 0-5 in Brussels last year. So I was, and similar results. So I was feeling a little beaten down. It's like, man, I just never win at the Pro Tour anymore. I still like the Pro Tour, but it was tough. And then after I top-aided in Atlanta earlier this year, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is great. And then I felt good. And then even when I went to Madrid for Shadows over Innistrad, it was like I had the monkey off my back. I was just playing. And then somehow I found myself in a position where I kept winning. And then I top-aided. And then we show up here to Sydney. And I even said the day before the tournament on Twitter, I was like, yeah, good luck to all my friends and teammates. I've had more than my fair share. I'm just hoping for a decent PT. And then, yeah. Like I said, I can't explain it, but I will certainly take it.
Yeah. And, for the listeners who don't follow the tournament scene as closely as some, this is a huge accomplishment. Making the top 8 of 3 Pro Tours in a row has only been done 3 times ever. And all of them were before the year 2000 in the last time it was done was in 1998. And, that's just a different era, man. I mean, that's just... The PT doesn't look the same as it did back then. And if we're talking about the modern era of the Pro Tour in the way that it's, formatted and the number of players and the way that you get there and all that stuff, this is just unprecedented. Nobody's ever done it. So yeah, anyway, it was really exciting to watch, and congratulations for that, Luisa. It was a special PT, no doubt about it. And of course we'll see you at Worlds, right?
Yeah, I did qualify for Worlds in a couple weeks. So I get to play Standard, Modern, and more importantly, Shadows over Innistrad / Eldritch Moon draft.
Yeah, so that'll be cool too. All right, so we've got a little bit of a grab bag show for you this week. We've got a few different mixed topics and ideas that we wanted to explore for this week's episode of the show. Before we get into all of that, of course, I want to remind you that the show is brought to you by channelfireball.com. They are the place to go for all of your Magic needs. That's right. You can show up and you can get better at Magic by checking out the free articles and videos that you'll get every single day at CFB. If you need cards, you can get them. Sealed product, you can get them in singles as well to fill out whatever your latest deck creation is. And you can even get supplies. You can get stuff like sleeves, deck boxes. You can get limited resources sleeves and deck boxes there. Heck, you can even get t-shirts. They got it all over there at CFB. And of course, if you need to sell cards back, which, as drafters, we find ourselves with those piles of rares that you're like, I don't know what I'm ever going to do with this. Well, don't wait till they rotate. Sell them back to Channel Fireball. And if you want to trade them in, they'll even give you a 30% bonus. And with that, of course, you can get more booster packs and draft more. So your one-stop shop, channelfireball.com. Please do check them out. You can also support the show directly via the Patreon. And, that's a website that you can go to help give back to the creators that make things that you enjoy, like this show, hopefully. And, you can check it out on there. You can set a monthly limit. You can pick how much you want per show. And you'll even get some sweet perks like the ability to submit questions for the Patreon question of the week and various giveaways as well. Now, this week, we're going to be doing sort of bonus Patreon questions of the week. We get so many of them, and we're working on a version or an episode of the show where we answer a bunch of them, but we thought, hey, let's answer multiples here. So we're going to go through 3 or 4 of them today, and then we'll do, actually, Luis, I'm going to spring one on you. We're going to do a couple of Crack-A-Packs. I got a special one here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Eldritch Moon, and a little bit about Shadows as well, just to make sure that we stay up to date on all the happenings post Pro Tour. So let's get into the questions. First things first, Adam Hoffman says, what stops Marshall from being an elite player to the degree of LSV? Is it just a prioritization of time? If this question isn't the Yoko Ono of this podcast, I don't know what is. Thank you, Adam, for the question. And I actually really like this question as well. And this is something that I think about. Yeah, this is something that I think about a lot, which is somebody, and he's using me as an example, but I think that, you can generalize this even further to, a player who's put significant time into their game and has realized some improvements from that, right? Has really, in some ways become an expert in certain facets of the game, and in other facets not. But, has really sat down and tried, and for a long time as well. And why isn't that person an elite player, right? Why isn't that person at that Luis Scott-Vargas, Ben Stark, Huey Jensen, Owen Turtenwald level? What is the difference? And I can tell you that there's a few things that I want to say with regards to this. The first one is that I had this exact same question. And the reason why I chose this question for one of the questions of the week here is because I have actually set out on a journey to answer this question. And I'm going to be presenting it in kind of a new way. I basically wanted to try to get into making some scripted content for limited resources. The show that Luis and I do here is unscripted. It's just me and him talking, and we've got some show notes that we go off of, but that's about it. It's
actually completely scripted, including this interruption.
You timed it perfectly once again. But yeah, but I wanted to explore the idea of doing a podcast, an audio only podcast that was more scripted. And if you listen to podcasts, you'll find that a lot of them are scripted, where they have, full soundtracks and audio clips from interviews interspersed with voiceover. And it's very polished and tight and well written. And it gives you this sort of different experience. It's less conversational, so it's not quite as, hanging out with Marshall and Luis style, but it does give you the opportunity to dive very deep on a topic and really kind of revisit it. And this is actually the topic I chose for my first one. And I can tell you that I already have gone out into the world, and I've recorded some tape, some footage with two very well-known high-level Magic players that I respect a lot. And I have started to piece together that episode. So something to look forward to. I'm not going to put a date on it because it does take me a long time. And this is my first time doing this type of content. It's quite difficult. But look for it down the line. And we're going to try to answer that question. Now, as far as talking about it here,
the question is
wait for it.
Is that you're not an elite level player because you spend all your time recording shows about how you're not elite level player.
Funny. It's really funny. I didn't record the show. I didn't ask the questions of the guys with me as the example, but I think I am a reasonable example for that, with the one exception being that, interestingly, you kind of did just answer the question, which is one of the reasons I think that I'm not at that level is because I go out and do recording stuff rather than sit around and try to get better at Magic. And I have consciously, used my time in such a way that it benefits me the most as far as what I'm interested in doing. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is trying to get better at Magic. But the truth of the matter is, given my career stance right now, becoming a full-time professional Magic player just isn't what I want. I don't think I would do it even if I had the opportunity. Now, if I were to qualify for a Pro Tour, I would play it for sure. For the experience and the credibility that you get in the booth, I think it would be fantastic for me. But if you told me, you're just going to put LR on hold and put, coverage on hold and all that, and just do professional Magic for a couple of years, I wouldn't do it. Like, financially, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me. And also, I've just put a lot of effort into trying to get good and develop these things, LR and CR and all that kind of stuff, and trying to get good in the booth and practice that. And so for me, it's kind of a situation where I haven't prioritized Magic, and that just is what it is. But even then, had I prioritized Magic, I know I'd be better than I am now. I don't think I'd be good as you guys, though. And there is something there. There's a gap. Do you have any sense for the, what makes up that gap?
It's interesting. It's certainly something I have thought about, and I've come to the conclusion that it's a combination of, passion, dedication, luck. Like, I'm being dead serious. There is definitely luck to it. And it's hard for me to tell exactly what makes up the reasons that someone will take to Magic or not. But I mean, I know people who have played much more than I have and who maybe haven't gotten to the same level. It's not like hours in, skill out category. And I think that what I like to do is look at the kind of common denominators between, like people who are like elite players. Like what are the things that are similar between Owen Turtenwald, Yuya Watanabe, William Jensen, like Ben Stark, these players, Joel Larson, like these players who consistently do well in the Pro Tour. And it is really, I mean, passion is definitely part of it, and dedication. Like, I don't know anyone who's gotten there without playing a lot, caring about it, and doing it in a way that is efficient. Like doing it in a way where you're like interacting with good players, where you're making games while testing. You're not just jamming games and just not really thinking about it. A lot of discussion, surrounding yourself with better players is also really important. In various times I've talked about like how I leveled up over the course of, learning Magic or getting better at Magic. And I think that the two main times in my life where I got much better, one is when I lived with Paul Chian and we just played Magic like all the time, online, in person, whatever, and talked about it the whole time. And the other is kind of the first couple of years of Team Channel Fireball, where it was just like a lot of, at the time, good players, but maybe not the best players, that I think we all combined and made ourselves all better.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. Like if you're luck, and this is where luck comes in. Luck comes in like two ways. One, it was lucky that the people I just happened to be friends with. Like again, when we formed a team, it wasn't like we picked, here are the 10 best players. We just picked, here are the people we hang out with. And it was lucky that those people happened to be people who were good enough and had the same interests and dedication and goals that we all were able to level up together. And the other thing is, I mean, it's lucky to be qualified for enough events that you want to keep going to them. Like you mentioned, like if you qualified for a Pro Tour, you'd play in that.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be awesome. I think that would be really cool. It's hard to qualify for like every Pro Tour. It's hard to keep qualifying for the Pro Tour.
Definitely.
And I know plenty of good players who have not managed to do so, and plenty of players who have managed to do so who aren't as good as people who haven't. Like there's luck in this game, and that's just how it works. And when you have to win, when you have to get first place in a 120 person PTQ, or you have to finish top 4 in an RPTQ after winning a PPTQ, or top 16 a Grand Prix or whatever, like you have to keep stringing those together. Some people are just going to catch more breaks than other people, and I feel like I've caught a lot of breaks. So it's just like a lot of different things put together, and the part that's tough is you kind of won't know the answer to that question until you put in all the legwork, at which point it can be tough, Yeah,
it can be. And I think being realistic about what your skill ceiling is a tough thing to do, but probably quite useful as well. Keep your eye out though. I really did. I went very, very deep on this type of question for that special edition thing. And when it comes out, you'll hear the answers from some of the pros.
This reminds me of a Grand Prix San Antonio, I believe it was, where actually Paul Chian and I were doing coverage, and you were playing. It was a sealed Grand Prix, and we covered.
Oh, this was Salt Lake City. It was you and Ben. Yeah.
Oh, me and Ben. Right. We covered your deck building in your first match, and then your match you're winning in for day 2, which you won. So that was funny. It was one of the rare times when I was in the booth and Marshall was on the battlefield.
Yeah, I tell you what, I couldn't wait to come home and watch it, because I really, I wanted to hear what you guys said, but B, I really want, like, it's so easy when you're in the booth, because I've been in the booth for so long, to forget what it's like to be under that lens, of other people maybe criticizing your play, or at least interpreting your play, and you not being able to make your case and say, well, no, this is what I was thinking. This is why I did this. You thought it was because of this, but it was because of this. I was playing around this card, and, maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong, but I know that that's there, but you can't replace that feeling. And I hit play on that YouTube video, like when I came home, and my God, that feeling is so you're just like, oh God, what if they just torch me? What if they just rip me apart? And I don't mean in a joking way. I mean, like, what if I make a really bad play, or what if the line of play I took is just wrong? And, it gets pointed out to me. And, it's really interesting being on the other side of that coin, but it was actually really fun to hear what you guys said. And by the way, like, not to get off topic here, but you guys were insanely good. I was like, oh my God, like, it was every single thing I was thinking of is what you guys said. It was just like, Yeah. Anyway, that was very good.
That's more a testament to how easy you are to predict.
when I'm playing well, maybe. All right, let's move on to the next question. We've got one from Ardak, who says, "Hi guys, having seen Marshall interact on the CSL and how LSV acts practically everywhere, what do you think is the appropriate level of humor in matches? And how does that change between each level of play, going from casual to professional? To what extent should we as players limit our humor when playing, given that we are hopefully having fun?" Cool question.
Yeah, this is great. This is actually a topic we've discussed. I've had this conversation a bunch of times with people.
Yeah.
Because I would love if I could goof off more at the Pro Tour. And you can see it in some rounds. Like, you can see it when I play against Paul. You can see it even when I play against Owen or Reed. Actually, in the top 4 of the Pro Tour, Owen Emmerickled me, and he's like thinking about how to take my turn. He's looking at all my cards, and I'm like,
so funny.
I've never taken a turn this long.
Yeah,
he was just like deep in the tank, and then he did all the things right and beat me very easily. But it's the sort of thing where like you were covering my draft at the Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, where I opened a foil Desolation Twin, and I just like flick it to the beginning of the pack and pretend like I'm going to take it.
Right,
like,
and I'm like, I know he's not going to take stupid Desolation, but it's funny. People got a kick out of it. And remember when you activated that creature land against Paul?
I was like activating creature lands end of Paul's turn for no effect. And he's just like looking very confused. We're playing at 7-1 on the Pro Tour. Like, the thing is, I can do that and still just like actually play my game. A lot of people just are going to find it distracting or dumb or whatever. So I don't blame you for not doing it. And I'm going to be pretty clear that I don't feel comfortable doing that against people who aren't my friends, because I feel like if I'm playing someone who's, they don't know me, maybe they're nervous. It's like, they're playing a Pro Tour, they're playing against me. Maybe we have a good record if we're lucky.
Yeah, and they sit down across 8-time Pro Tour top 8 competitor, Hall of Famer. Yeah, they're going to be nervous.
And I'm just like acting like a buffoon, and then maybe winning, and right. That feels like it would be pretty bad. Whereas Paul and Owen and Reed, these guys, they know what I'm like, and they're willing to put up with it. So
they are very, very attuned to your buffoonery.
Right. So that's a reason that I don't do it more. And there's multiple reasons. One is that like I think that it would come off poorly against people I don't know, or even people I know who aren't really into it. And I think that's fine. Like, if a lot of people are like completely business when they're playing in a Pro Tour or a Grand Prix or a tournament they care about, and that's fine. The other is that it could be distracting, like even for you. Like, I can imagine people who are like trying to mess around but then realize that like they're actually playing worse because of it, and they wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say that Magic's supposed to be fun, and I like having fun while playing Magic, and that makes Magic more fun. And especially at other levels of competition, I'm way more apt to do that. I mean, maybe part of it is because I stream, so most of my Magic was played on Magic Online, and I'm always like that. So like I'm just used to goofing around while playing Magic. The biggest question mark for me, especially if Ardak's considering like what is appropriate, what is not, is kind of how the opponent takes it. Like you don't want to come off as like messing around or being distracting or bullying to your opponent. And I would not have said to someone else that I've never taken a turn this long, but I felt comfortable saying it to Owen because.
So what do you like about it though? Like what do you think that like there should be a more fun had at that level of play, or is it just like you like it for the cameras, or what's the upside?
It's both. I mean, I think it's a better viewing experience. I know I watch Pro Tour matches and GP matches, when I'm at home, and I would like it if players messed around more. I think that'd be more fun. So I like making like the broadcast more fun. I also I literally have more fun when I'm just comfortable and talking to my opponents, and I like messing around. So that's just in my personality. So if other players had that, maybe to a higher degree, maybe we would see it. Again, it's easy to come off wrong, so I'm judicious in how I do this.
Yeah, I don't know how to fit that in. I don't, because I agree. When people are talking and having, it's a little more lighthearted. I mean, remember, we're playing Magic. Like, it's supposed to be fun, maybe not just pure fun. I mean, this show is all about learning how to win and stuff, but still, like, winning's fun, or, you got to enjoy that time, right? I mean, if you're not enjoying it, what's the point? And at the same time, with so much on the line, it's hard to ask people to, to take that casualness into the feature match area, or even just at a regular match at the PT, just because it's like, they put a lot of effort into this, and they really don't want to lose. So I don't know. It's a tough balance to hit, but I'll tell you what, from the booth perspective, it's way better. Like when people are talking, when I'm in the commentary booth, I'll often just let them chat and we'll just sit and listen, because I think that's really interesting, and it gives people a feel for what's really going down in the match. If, maybe somebody's talking a little trash, or if they're joking around, or if they're just, small talk, and you can get a better feel for the players' personalities and stuff too. All right. Next question comes from Joel. He says, LSV, judging from your performance at the VSL, you certainly are a master of balance. He says, I have to ask, as a new father myself, how are you going to balance new baby versus Magic and other endeavors? Now, we've talked about this a little bit, but I thought we'd check in, because new baby's still new, but you've had a little bit of time to kind of adjust. How are things going?
First of all, the reason the phrasing of this question is making fun of the fact that I lost to balance in the VSL very badly.
Yeah, I tried to not dagger you too hard there.
No, that's all right. I thought it was funny. The second is the baby's practically full grown. I think she fends for herself now.
So you're done. You guys had a good run together.
Yeah. No, I'm still learning this. I don't know. I mean, I got home from the PT, and pre-baby, I think I probably would have streamed. I may have gotten my PT report done already, but I haven't done any of those things because I've just been hanging out with my wife and the baby. So I am already seeing that being a difference, because that's what I wanted to do when I got back. I do expect to do those things. I'm going to write a Pro Tour report. At some point going to stream. I'm doing LR, but it's just the priority level has gone down. So I don't know what the balance is going to be, but I'm trying to strike it as best I can.
Is it cool?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
It's great. All right. Last question is from Andy Skinner. He says, hi, Marshall. You are considered to be one of the best MTG commentators, and you are personally my favorite podcaster. Thanks for the feedback, Andy. Let's move on to the next section. No, he actually has a question. You've managed to consistently attract terrific co-hosts. Do you agree with that, Luis?
I mean, like I said, I don't know how I've earned these accolades, but I'll take it.
And entertain us weekly for years. My question is, what are your podcasting, or perhaps more generally broadcasting, level ups? Was it only hard work, or have you had some breakthrough ideas that helped you work smarter at this too? And I thought we'd do. I'd answer, because this question is not Magic specific, but it's a little bit more behind the scenes for the podcast itself. And I have definitely had those. I have also, put a lot of thought and effort into trying to get good at this in the sense of what's working and what's not. I mean, I'm definitely a trial and error type person when it comes to this, because I tend to follow my gut on stuff like this and then see if it works. And if something, pops up that's like, I could see where you're going with that, but it's not quite good, then I won't. A few of the level ups I've had, one of them is one of the big things is when you're doing an interview, it's really tempting to try to answer your own question while asking it. For some reason, well, actually, I know the reason. It's mainly a trust thing with the person that you're going to ask. It's if you think that the person is going to get where you were going with a question, then you can ask them in a pretty direct way. But if they're not, then you feel a need to fill in where you're going with the question, but that often has the unintended side benefit or side effect of answering the question ahead of the person. And that's something that I've continually tried to cut down on. I've gotten better at it, but I'm still not perfect. But that's one thing that I've definitely worked on, really trying to concentrate and just, keep the question short and let that other person answer. Now, of course, there are the times where that person doesn't know where you were going and they don't answer the question that you were asking. And then you do have to kind of elaborate. But I find that that's fine. You can elaborate after the fact just as much. And if they just answer the question that you wanted and you kept it short, then it's just that much cleaner for the audience who's watching. So that's a big one. Also another one with interviewing that I've learned, I actually learned this from taking a class, kind of a seminar thing online that I took about storytelling. Actually, I took it when I was preparing to do that special edition thing I was talking about earlier, as I was kind of getting my head around that, which is knowing when to just let silence hit when you're asking people questions, which is really hard. It goes against every instinct in your brain. But sometimes if you ask a question and somebody answers it, they have something else to say. And if you give them some breathing room and some time, then it signals to them that they can keep talking and that you're not going to move on to something else. In kind of a more passive way, it's a little more comfortable than saying, tell me more, or, hedging them forward like that. And I find that oftentimes the thing they say after the break, after you give them a little bit of time, is even more important than the thing they said, as a direct answer. You'll often hear, you ask somebody a question and they'll be like, yeah, I don't, this, that, the other thing. And then there's these reasons and stuff. And then at that point, they kind of sigh and they stop for a minute. And that's where it's tempting to jump in and go, great, okay, here's the next question. But if you just let them, they'll often like sigh and then they'll be like, yeah, when I really think about it, I don't even care about that. Or, and they'll go off on some like more truthful, deeper answer. And if, all you had to do is just get out of their way and let them do it and be okay with an awkward silence happening. And that's a thing that I've learned again, from an interview perspective. When it comes to the podcast, I've come to really value chemistry with my co-host really highly. I've had a lot of different people come on as like co-host guests or as, shorter term things. And, I definitely have a real sense for who I can get along with and stuff. And one of the things that you deal with on a podcast like this as well is that we're doing this over Skype. Right. I don't have Luis sitting next to me or laying on the bed at the hotel room as he so often is.
Not always.
as when we're on the road. But, then I can look at you. I can do hand motions. I can hedge to you and where we're going. But here, it's only because you and I get along and have always gotten along really that I think that we can keep a pace and keep a back and forth going like this. And I've had that with all of my long-term co-hosts. And that's something that, I think that when I first started podcasting, I wouldn't have said that. I think I would have said something more like, it's more about what that person knows and if they're good at speaking, and explaining their thoughts. And, one of the things I value is that they have something to teach or something to say. And every one of my co-hosts has had that quality. And I think I would have valued those more. But now I think that even if somebody had that, if we just had, soft chemistry or just wasn't quite there, I think that would be, something that I would pay a lot more attention to. So yeah, those are all level ups. The last one is something that I think Luis, you and I do particularly well together, which is try things out and then iterate or give feedback or cut as we see fit. That didn't really work or that did work, or here's what I like about that. And, we trust each other's opinions to kind of make sure that we can, figure out what's best for the show. But I think that's the other thing is that I've definitely gotten a little looser on that. Like I'm much more willing to just trust your opinion and try something. Or if I have an idea, just throw it out there because man, you never know. It's so weird how that works when you're throwing things at a large group of people. It's just the thing that you think is crappy, everybody loves, and the thing you think is great, they're like, yeah, that's fine. And it's just you trying to predict that I found is just not good. And a better idea is just to cast a wide net and kind of, see what sticks. So thanks for the questions, guys. We do appreciate it. We've got a bunch more in the queue as well, which we'll be getting to. Crack-a-pack time, Luis?
Oh, yeah.
This one comes from Ben from Australia. Thank you, Ben. It's nice to meet everybody in Australia. I have to say, Luis, that when it comes to limited resources, Australia loves us. They are so awesome down there. It's hard to come up with another place that I visit that I feel as loved as I do when I go to Australia. They are so fantastic, bringing us Tim Tams and all this stuff. All right. Waxing.
Yeah, I'm sad I missed the GP because I assumed there was a lot more listeners at the Grand Prix than
there were
the Pro Tour.
Tons. Yeah.
1,500 people instead of 300.
Yeah, exactly. It was great. I got to meet, I did a radio interview. I did a TV show thing. I did a streamer I actually got to commentate a couple of streamers, Ziggy D. It was really funny. And they when I went in, I'm kind of like, I don't really know what these guys want me to do. And me, like I like to joke around and stuff. And they're like, all right, so we want you to like tease us. Like you can make fun of us. Or like, we're Australian, we can take it. I'm like, perfect. No problem. And we had fun with it. All right. First card is Waxing Moon.
This is marginal at best. It's not a card I'm really looking to put in my deck.
Agreed. Brazen Wolves. God, I love that card.
Brazen Wolves are very underrated. Essentially, a 3-mana 4/3 attacker is just a beater.
It's just a savage beater.
And a 3-mana 2/3 blocker is not like the end of the world, but it's really the attacking part where the money is. And I think Brazen Wolves is just like a tad lower than the best common, the rest red common Galvanic Bombardment. So
yeah, I agree.
Certainly not. I'm not happy to take a first pick Brazen Wolves because. Well, taking the second best common in a color first pick is just not a good first pick. The rares are very good in this set, but I don't think that it's a card I'm too unhappy about in the first couple picks.
Well, I'm thrilled to take it first pick.
Well, I guess you're less lucky than I am, but I suppose that's already obvious.
All right, fine. I'm not thrilled. Drag Under.
I do like Drag Under. It's a good card. It's, again, not a first pick, but this is like the kind of card when you see 6, I think, okay, blue might be open.
Yeah.
It's a card that I don't think I've ever cut from my deck.
No, I haven't either, and I love it. This is one of my favorite effects for sure, especially the draw a card style. I mean, everybody, I like to bounce creatures, that's fine, but like this one just gives you protection from so many of the like dumb things that your opponent can do to you, and it just seems to slot into the format nicely against all different types of things like enchantments and werewolves and all that kind of stuff. It of the Horrid Swarm.
This is kind of the I call it the constellation emerge creature because it in both it is a fine card, but it's just worse than all the other emerge guys at common, and certainly worse than all the uncommons except for the one that destroys artifacts and enchantments.
Yeah, so I agree.
I wouldn't take Into the Horrid Swarm over Drag Under or Brazen Wolves, but once you're in the Emerge deck, then it's a fine playable.
Yeah, I think it is too. It's tempting to group cards and then assume that the worst one of that group are bad. For example, like the werewolves. Say, well, which is the worst werewolf? And you can pick whichever, maybe it's the Kessig Prowler or whatever. But that card's still sweet, right? It of the Horrid Swarm is the worst of these, and it's still pretty good. It's not quite on that sweet level. I agree with you, but it's I think it's playable. Borrowed Malevolence is next. That's the black instant that has escalate, and you can give a creature -1 and a creature +1/+1. It's fine.
I thought this card would be better than it is. Turns out the format has slightly larger creatures than I expected, so it's just doesn't interact as well as it would if you were all on all 2-drops.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I do like about it, and that makes it so that I'll usually play my first copy, I think I've always played my first copy, is that there are enough 1 toughness creatures around that you can actually kill a real card with it. And then if not, you could have to engineer like a combat situation, but that happens enough times that the Borrowed Malevolence is good. I do think the second one loses a lot of value though. Thraben Standard Bearer, that's the white 1/1, and then you can pay 1 and a white, tap it, and discard a card to make a 1/1 human. Kind of not a fan of this one, to be honest.
The white-red Madness deck is not going to happen.
Right.
Stop
it's just
to make it happen.
Yeah, like it feels like R&D thought it was going to be a thing like Stern Constable into Thraben Standard Bearer, but it just doesn't quite get there. And so the times when I've said, okay, fine, if that's not the case, I'm going to try out Thraben Standard Bearer in a card that has like Borrowed Grace, a deck that has like Borrowed Grace or 2. And even then, I just find it slow, and the cost is pretty high, and I'm kind of just off of the Standard Bearer. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's unplayable. I just don't like it. I'm certainly not picking it this early. That's the kind of card you can get, third to last or whatever.
Also, I just never played the card.
I've played it twice at least.
Has it been good?
It was medium minus both. Like, I mean, maybe I just call it bad both times. Like, and again, these were in decks that had, Inspiring Captain, that kind of card. And I thought, okay, I can use this, make a bunch of tokens. It'll be, my flood protection or whatever. The real downside to it is that it just does nothing on its own. It's just a 1/1 for 1, which is just so insignificant. And then when you add to the fact that it's slow, like 1 and a white, tap it is expensive. Discarding a card is a real cost. Yeah. Poor Thraben Standard Bearer. He just loses out. Cathar's Shield is next. Another card I haven't played. The 0 mana equipment, creature gets +0/+3, and it costs a full 3 to equip. It also gets Vigilance.
So this is one of those free cards, not just because it costs
it's free.
0.
You just play it just like an Ornithopter.
Because if you want a Cathar's Shield, you'll likely get one. You're not going to have to use a pick on it. I don't think this card is particularly good, but some of the people on my team had good experiences with it. So this is the kind of card. See, there's actually an interesting class of cards here. So we're both about 30 drafts in, maybe a few less.
Yeah, I think I'm at low 20s. I think I did about 5. I'm probably at about, like 22, 23, somewhere in that range.
Right. So we're certainly getting into the format and have played with almost all the cards at this point. But Cathar's Shield, once I get back home and I'm just like really jamming on Magic Online, Cathar's Shield is the kind of card I discover whether I like it or not. Because that'll just happen kind of naturally. Like eventually I'll just have a deck where I just like, maybe I'll try this card. Okay. And that hasn't happened yet, but I do think the card could be playable in some decks.
Okay. Well, I think it's really bad. I do.
Yeah,
I think it's, I mean, like, I don't think I need to. Now, I'm not saying that like my opinion's bulletproof here. If people start beating me with Cathar Shield, or I start to see a certain deck or archetype that really can take advantage, I could be swayed. But this is exactly where I don't want to spend a card. You know what I mean? Like the card in my hand, I just never want it to be this. Really bad. Ugh. Exultant Cultist. I like that one.
I do like Exultant Cultist a lot. This is exactly why I was, both of us really are so in love with the Emerge deck last week.
Yeah.
Is that I would put an Exultant Cultist in all my blue decks even if I had no Emerge cards. It's a 3-mana 2/2 that draws you a card when it dies. That's just a great card.
Yeah.
And then it just works perfectly with Emerge.
Yeah. It's just all upside for minimal downside. It does have a little, 2/2 for 3 mana is not really where you want to be, but yeah, good card. This is a good one to think about or talk about here. I saw a lot of people playing in this at the PT, and I find it a little more mediocre. It's Stensia Innkeeper. That's the 3 and a red 3/3 vampire. When it enters the battlefield, you can tap a land an opponent controls, and it doesn't untap on that person's next untap step.
Man, I got worked by this card actually against Yuya when he played it.
Yeah.
Had locked down one of my fourth land, and I just didn't draw land on my turn, and I just had to pass the turn doing nothing.
Ugh.
That being said, the card is just fine.
That was the best case scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, the best case scenario is you keep them off a whole turn's worth of plays, which isn't going to happen all that often, but it is a playable card. Kind of wanted to talk about a similar card later in the show here, but suffice to say, 4 mana 3/3 is only slightly below the bar if it has no text, and
Agreed.
this is real text.
It is. Yeah, I agree. I think the bigger question when it comes to Stensia Innkeeper is how many 4-drops do you have? If you need one, or if you're really looking to kind of fill out your curve or need an extra creature, I think you can run a Stensia Innkeeper and be fine with it. But you're also not looking to put this in your deck, right? You're not like, oh, I got to make room for the Stensia Innkeeper. If you have a few other 4s and they're already good, this one probably ends up on the sideline. All right, here's a card I wanted to ask you about because I still have yet to play with this. It's an uncommon as we move into our uncommons. It's Fury Blade Vampire. The 1 and a red 1/2 with trample, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can discard a card and give it +3/+0 until end of turn. I have played against it multiple times, so I have some experience with it, but I still haven't found a deck for myself that I was like, oh, this is, I'm going to madness stuff out, or I'm going to do that. I just haven't really been there. The red decks I've drafted have been more of like, the blue-red tempo and the blue-red spells type decks, where this one doesn't seem to be quite as good. Have you had experience with it?
I've seen it played in a bunch of decks. I haven't actually played with it myself.
Okay. I don't think it's great, but
it's good in the aggressive red-black vampires deck.
Yeah.
It's good if you have madness cards. Basically, if you have 0 madness cards in your deck, this card's not very good because you're going to end up kind of 2-for-1ing yourself to get a couple damage through a lot of the time. Because this, even when you discard a card, just trades for 2s and 3s. It doesn't go over the top of them. It's only got 2 toughness. So what you really need to be doing is discarding, an Alchemist Greeting, clear their blocker, take 4, or even discarding like a Weirding Vampire and just trading your 2-drop for their 2-drop. They take 2 damage and you got a discount on your madness card, and that's a fine deal. So I'm not super in love with this card. I think I would rather just start with Brazen Wolves over this.
Agreed. Which is part of the reason why I haven't played it. Insatiable Gorgers is now. Wow, we've got a lot of red cards here. This is 2 red for a 5/3 vampire berserker that attacks each combat if able. And it does have madness. The madness is 3 and a red.
Yeah, it's not a card I've loved. It's funny because it looks so much like Incorrigible Youths, but it's actually just way, way worse. So
and let's just put it on the bar. Is it better than Brazen Wolves?
I don't think so. I wouldn't start. Either. I would rather start with Brazen Wolves. I
would too.
A 5/3 and a 4/3 aren't that different, and this has a drawback in the madness part. You're not getting a discount. You're just getting a color fixing a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like it should have haste, right? It's a berserker. It's red.
Yeah, maybe that's what's tripping me up. Because I always look at it and I think this card. It's also uncommon, and I get a little tricked by the rarity symbol. I'm like, oh, this is uncommon. This is probably pretty good, and it just turns out it's just like
it's medium.
Not a great card.
Yeah, it's just not a great card. This next one's good, but in a color pair I still have yet to have a lot of success with. It's Ride Down. So red-white for an instant destroy target blocking creatures that were blocked by that creature. This combat game trample. It's a good card.
Ride Down's a fine card.
Yeah.
I would
never taken it here though.
No. If you were red-white, you would take it over Brazen Wolves, but it's so close that you should just take Brazen Wolves to start with. And honestly, even if you're red-white, there are some decks that need the 3-drop more anyway. So
yeah.
It's really not close to Brazen Wolves here. So as much as Ride Down is a fine card, it's nothing you should be too excited about.
No, I find that like it's a reward that you get for being in red-white, but you get it after you're in red-white. So like pack 2, the ride downs that get opened, you're probably going to end up in your hands, and you take them. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's going to go in every red-white deck. All right, we've got another uncommon before we get to our rare. It is Tangleclaw Werewolf. That's 2 green for a 2/4 that can block an additional creature each combat, and for 6 and a green, you can transform it into a 4/6 with vigilance that must be blocked if able, and can block an additional creature as well. Fibrous Entangler.
This is good. It's funny. None of the werewolves in the set are bad.
Nope.
First of all,
nope.
And this one is one of the like decent ones.
It's on the lower half. Yeah, it's still very good, but it's definitely not one of the top tier.
Well, it's worse than all the common ones.
Yeah, it is.
I'd rather have Captive or Outcasts for sure. So.
Agreed. I mean, this might be the worst. It's funny to say, but it might be the worst of them.
This might actually just be the worst werewolf. But
as we described earlier, it's still great.
It's not even the best wolf in the pack. Brazen Wolves is better.
Yeah, that's true. But I still like it, right? Like, the thing is, every green deck, I'm playing this no matter what. I'm playing this card.
Yes. The power of the werewolves is that they're just mana sinks. 4 mana, 2/4 can block 2 creatures. You wouldn't play that in all decks. You'd play that in some. But given the opportunity to pay 7 mana and just flip into something gigantic, then you'd always put this in card in your deck.
Yeah, and this card is a major pain for your opponent, too. Like, it must be blocked. If you can get their creature out of the way so they don't have a good double block, it starts just gobbling up their creatures every turn. It also, if they only have one big blocker or whatever, you can attack with this and everything else and get in a bunch of damage potentially. And then the thing that I like about the design on the card, I find this elegant, is that the fact that it is such a good blocker as a 2/4, which is already a good blocker, and then it can even block an additional creatures if they have like a bunch of small ones, lends itself to getting to that point where you actually build up to 7 mana and can transform it. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, it sort of has its own built-in game plan. Our rare, it's Harmless Offering.
Well, this card is appropriately harmless.
Harmless indeed.
Cannot envision a circumstance where I would play this card.
No, it's the 2 and a red sorcery. Target opponent gains control of target permanent you control. You get to give somebody something. We're not doing that. So kind of a junky rare. So I've got Brazen Wolves Drag Under Tangleclaw Werewolf pulled aside. There's also the Insatiable Gorgers, the Fury Blade Vampire, the Ride Down, the Exultant Cultist. But I have it down to these 3. And for me, I do think it comes down to Brazen Wolves or Tangleclaw Werewolf. Maybe Drag Under's in that discussion as well. But I think I actually would just take the Brazen Wolves. As much as I joked about it at the beginning of the pack, I think it's just like the most solid choice here.
Definitely. I'm in for Brazen Wolves here.
All right, so that will go. And by the way, for people that are new to the show, hello, welcome. I give away all these rares. So I've got a little pile here that I make with all of our Crack-A-Pack rares, and they go out to one of our patrons. So all you have to do is sign up on the Patreon for any level, and you will automatically be eligible for that. Which brings us to our next Crack-A-Pack, Luis.
Oh, yeah.
This is a cool one. So this one is from Daniel, Doug, and Tim of the Team Weatherlight. They made sure that they...
Karn, the 4th member.
So this is not Eldritch Moon. We're going back. We're going back, buddy. We're grab-bagging it up today.
All right.
This is Tempest.
Ooh, I've actually drafted a fair amount of Tempest.
All right. Is there anything sweet that we can open up for the listeners here?
Oh, in that... Like, Wasteland, I think, is just going to be the winner.
That's the best one, right?
It's an uncommon, too.
The last time I drafted Tempest, I opened a Wasteland.
Oh, what's it like being so lucky?
You were sitting right there. I drafted it with you.
Oh, really? That was the last time you drafted it?
Yep.
All right, there we go.
I kept that Wasteland, too, by the way.
Yeah, of course you did.
All right. I'm trying to open this pack, but they taped on their Team Weatherlight logo, so I can't get to the back. All right, we did it. All right.
I think they should have given you a pack of Weatherlight to open, though.
Yeah, it did kind of feel like that.
The team.
All right, the first card is called Cindermarsh. It's named after me. Here, do you know these cards? Oh my god.
Yeah, let's see if I can get all the cards.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, let's do this. All right.
All right. Cindermarsh taps for a red or a black and doesn't untap for a turn or taps for a colorless.
Exactly. Yeah. Mana fixing in Tempest, not a thing, right?
This isn't a particularly great land to begin with, since if you use it, you're down a land next turn. And yeah, I mean, they're just 3-color decks weren't a thing either. So there's not that many opportunities to play this card.
All right. So there's going to be 15 cards in this pack, right?
Yeah.
How many do you think you're going to get right? And I don't mean like literally to the word, but just that you knew what the card was.
Right. This is interesting. Let's set the line at 13.5.
Okay, 13.5. God,
so
damn.
You have to take.
I know how good you are at this stuff.
You have to take the over/under.
I know. I'm trying to decide because I know like that's a fair line. You have an incredibly, but this is like a random pack. Like these aren't like the good cards from Tempest. These are just cards from Tempest. God, I don't want to root against you, man. I'm gonna take the over. I have faith in you. I don't care. Listeners at home, you guys can lock in your vote now. He's already got one down.
One down.
All right. Here's a hard one. Well, let's just say I wouldn't have known what this does. Light of Day.
So it's 3 and a white enchantment. Black creatures can't attack or block.
Jesus, he just snapped that off.
This is first of all, you're doing the uncommons first.
Those are uncommons? I'm doing just in order that I opened it.
Yeah, those are uncommons. They didn't have colored symbols. So I actually do rares too. So, but
well, should I just keep going or I don't know what's what.
This is a disaster.
Yeah, I guess these first 3 are uncommons and then the next one's are rare. Is that what I should assume?
Save
I'll put the other 2 at the back then.
Okay, yeah. Light of Day. This is back in the day when color hosers meant something.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah, you do not want to play against Light of Day with a black deck. And as a result, you can actually take color hosers super high because they're just like, you know how we say sideboard cards are, F in your main deck, but like they're like a B or an A in your main in your after sideboard. Mm-hmm. These sideboard cards are A pluses post board.
Yeah,
you're talking about cards like Choke, an enchantment that makes islands not untap.
Yeah, and this is insane.
This kills all their black creatures forever.
It literally pacifies every black creature they have and that they will have.
Yeah, so it's actually a very reasonable early pick, even if you only get to play it in 1 to 2 of your matches.
Because it's just an outright game winner.
It's just like the value above replacement on this card is just through the roof.
I am so glad they went away from cards like this. What a dumb card.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, it's hilarious that it's against black, which has no way to remove it.
Right, that's the funny
It's just like, haha. All right, this next card. Oh, it's a good one. Rampant Growth.
Yeah, this is sorcery, 1 and a green. I bet most listeners even know what this is.
Yeah, for sure.
Search your library for a land, put into play tapped, a basic land.
God, I've always hated the artwork on this one. It's got that weird clam thing or whatever.
Oh, no, that cow is the Mirage one. This is the big,
gross.
In any case, Rampant Growth is fine. It's a playable card. In a 2-color deck, you'll play Rampant Growth. It's a little less appealing than it would be in a 3-color format. You could splash, but just didn't happen very often. And Tempest was a pretty fast format, so having low drops is probably better than Rampant Growthing into 5 drops.
Right, yeah. Oh, I already know this one's good. This is Lightning Blast.
Yeah, this is 3 and a red instant, deal 4 to target creature or player. Lightning Blast, very solid first pick. You would not be unhappy about first picking a Lightning Blast.
Would you loot it away?
Yeah, so I would loot if I had one in my hand. Sure. If in Tempest and older sets in particular, you take commons way more often. Like, you're happy about taking commons a lot more than in current level sets.
Why is that?
Just there were fewer great rares and some of the commons were absurd.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that card's great.
Which I think makes sense. And that's not even one of the best commons. I mean, it's one of the better commons. Sorry, it's not like this is the set that has Rolling Thunder at common.
Yeah, that's
red
right.
X, deal X divided any way you choose.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That would be like a rare or mythic rare if it was in this normal these draft formats. But I think it's good. I mean, I think commons shouldn't be just windmill slams over good rares, and it just so happened that that's how these sets ended up.
Lowland Giant.
The Summit Prowler of Tempest, 2 red for a 4/3. A solid card. Basically strictly worse than Lightning Blast because it's harder to cast and not as good, but still a card you basically always play.
Circle of Protection White.
Speaking of those color hosers, so the circles are all 1 and a white enchantment, and you pay a colorless to prevent all damage from a card of that source to you. Mm-hmm. Heinously unfun to play against.
Is it to you? I am curious how they template, because this actually just says, 1, prevent all damage. Sorry, to you. Never mind, I didn't read it right. Yeah. So it just blanks the ability of all those creatures to attack? Yeah,
but not only that, they have to attack you to force you to spend your mana, and you're just sitting there using your circle every turn.
Yeah.
Not the best. Circle Protection White also not the best because white can, as you pointed out earlier, destroy enchantments. So I'm still on the Lightning Blast train.
Metallic Silver. Sliver, excuse me.
So Slivers this is a theme in Tempest. It's actually the first time they showed up, and Metallic Sliver is just a 1-mana 1/1. But it's a sliver, so if you have a bunch of other slivers, it kind of gets bigger. You didn't really want to take this one either. I've actually had decks where I'd play it because Muscle Sliver was a common that gives all slivers +1/+1.
Yeah, there you go. But you can pick these up later. Also interesting to note for Magic geeks, this is before creatures had subtypes. So it's just an artifact creature, and it actually has in the rules part, it says metallic sliver counts as a sliver. Which is a funny reminder. Diabolic Edict. There's no way you know what that does.
So, this looks a lot better than it is, and we actually kind of say that whenever we come up with this effect. This is actually where these...
Actually, yeah. Edict. We did it.
Diabolic Edict's 1 and a black instant. Target player sacrifices a creature.
How funny is that? We use that. We always say Edict effect, and we actually just opened actual Edict.
Right, and this card is mediocre because it just always kills your opponent's worst creature, and in Limited, they have 3 creatures out. Their worst one's not great. It was pretty revolutionary when it first came out, though. It was like one of the first non-targeted removal spells, so it was a very, very interesting and cool new Magic card. And now, it's a good effect. It keeps getting reprinted for a reason.
Were you playing? I mean, this is 97. This is before you were like seriously playing, right?
Yes, my experience from Tempest comes from doing Tempest drafts on Magic Online.
Okay, yeah, I actually, it's funny. I actually was playing when this set was out, or shortly after, like when these cards were around. I remember having a lot of these cards just in my collection. I had metallic slivers all over the place. I remember that. Bayou Dragonfly. You remember what that guy does?
So this is 1 and a green. I know that much.
Yes.
And, this is tough. It's got flying. I think it's a 0/1 flying that gives them a poison when it hits them.
No, not that one. This is the stupidest card. It's actually like a huge compliment that you didn't remember this because it's so terrible.
All right, this is the one I get, though. I only get to get one.
Yeah, it is. So Bayou Dragonfly, 1 and a green for a 1/1 flying swamp walk.
Okay. Right.
It's like a pure top-down flavor design here. It's
yeah, it is. I mean,
even though like two abilities is not.
Well, Swamp Walk and Flying aren't the most complimentary abilities.
Right.
And yes, I've never played a Bayou Dragonfly. I would not recommend it. See, even if they have swamps, 1 damage unblockable turn, not the biggest.
No. Oh, God. Are we going to get you?
Oh, we'll see. We'll see.
1 down. All right, next is Sky Shroud Ranger.
It says green for a 1/1, and you can tap to put a land into play.
Yeah, as a sorcery. What is this card good?
It is not. Basically, you're spending a card on this, which 1 mana 1/1 is not really a card, and in exchange, you're getting to ramp your mana only if you have the right supply of lands. Like imagine drawing this in a 2-land hand. So it's just a very bad card. This kind of card, because it got reprinted in Champions as like I don't remember, like something Tribe Scout. Had a brief moment in the sun with the Ravnica bounce lands, but those didn't exist back then. So yeah, I would not Sky Shroud Ranger. I would definitely Lightning Blast here.
Spinal Graft.
This card's kind of interesting. 1 and a black enchantment or aura. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, but if it becomes targeted, it dies. You have to sacrifice it. And you can kind of put there was a Spinal Graft beatdown deck, if I do remember. You put on your Shadow creature. Shadow's an ability that says you can only be blocked by creatures with Shadow. You can only block creatures with Shadow. So it was another form of evasion that was all over the place in Tempest. So
if you could sneak a Spinal Graft on and they weren't hitting your creature, then you could just wreck them.
Yeah, you just go to town. But it obviously had a lot of drawbacks. And this is back when you had a lot of like creatures that had activators that could target things. So
yeah, and specifically pingers as well, right? Wasn't there a lot of them?
Yeah, there was a common pinger in both red and blue.
Blue one as well, yeah. The root, I remember that guy, yeah.
It's Rootwater Hunter and Fire Slinger, which are both really annoying to deal with.
Yeah. Speaking of Shadow, Soltari Trooper.
This is 1 and a white for a 1/1 Shadow, and then when it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
This card's so good.
A fine card.
Beater. Yeah, just
2 mana 2/2 unblockable mostly, and that's good enough.
Yep.
This was an aggressive format. I would still Lightning Blast. Lightning Blast is a pretty high bar.
All right. A few more cards. I'm really curious to see if you get these ones. All right, this next one's called Crown of Flames.
So this is 1 red for another aura, and enchanted creature, you can pay a red to give it +1/+0, or you can pay a red to return Crown of Flames to your hand.
How do you do that, man? I've seen this card 100 times, and I didn't remember what it was called or what it did.
Well, it's not because I played it, because this card is very bad. So
yeah, it's really bad.
You should not put this card in your deck. It's an aura that you have to sink a bunch of mana into, doesn't give you toughness, and then the upside is you can buy it back, which is not great.
Okay, so this next card, I don't remember it, but I can tell you that our rare, you're going to know what it does.
All right.
And so this is the one.
Uncommon's the hardest, by the way.
Yeah, definitely the hardest. And this card's weird. So if it's really good, I think you'll know. And if it sucks, I think you're going to have a hard time. So it's called Flickering Ward.
Oh, okay. This card was good.
Okay, then you know it.
I played this card in a very bad constructed deck a long time ago.
Oh, no.
It's a 1 white enchanted creature as a protection from any color, and then you can pay a white to return Flickering Ward.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so this card is good.
This is similar to Crown of Flames, except for good.
Right, because you play against an opponent who's like playing red-green. You put this on your creature, give pro-green because they have 2 big green creatures in play. And then if they kill your creature, if they kill it in response, you're out of luck. So you try not to do that. But if they try to kill your creature while it's in play, you can just pay a white, get back your Flickering Ward. You can also replay it if the color that you want changes, or you can like attack with the creature, bounce forward, put it on a blocker. Like it does a lot of things. So yeah, definitely a strong card.
All right. I think you'll know this one. It's called Pearl Medallion.
Pearl Medallion is a cycle of medallions.
Yep.
They all cost 2 colorless mana, and they reduce the spells of their color by 1, in this case white. So
you did it! I knew you could do it, man. I took the over, and you got there. How many of you at home took the over, and how many took the under? I'm really curious. I still can't believe it, though. Like, I knew you were the favorite, but it didn't mean that you were a lock. And like, unbelievable, man. How do you do that? Anyway, whatever. We're taking lightning.
Why do I know what Crown of Flames does? Serious question.
Like honestly,
I've never played the card. It's so bad.
You may need to reevaluate your life decisions this far. The fact that you know that card is just creepy.
It's not utilizing my memory in an effective manner.
No, but thankfully you have extra memory to spare, it seems.
In the other case, I would take Lightning Blast out of this pack, and the card is great.
Yeah. All right, that was fun. Thanks again
not
to
your normal
Team
LR
Weatherlight.
fare, but hey, you know.
No, but it was fun, and I thought we would. I've had this pack. I've got a few more, to be honest, of older sets and stuff. In fact, I actually have another Tempest one from those guys. And they gave us 2 Tempests and a original Modern Masters. So, yeah, we'll work through those another time. I just thought, grab bag, have some fun. We crack that. All right, let's get into a few cards here, before we wind things down for the show. Luis and I have been talking a lot throughout the week, and just as we always do, about the format and stuff like that. So we thought we'd hit up on a few cards that we're noticing, as we're drafting on Magic Online and such. They're maybe a little underrated, a little overrated, maybe something interesting to say about them. Where do you want to start, Luis?
I think we could just kind of go through this list that we made, because we're still trying to get a handle on what the format kind of feels like and means overall. We're certainly going to have more deep dives into what the different decks are in the format. I do want to point out that Blue Green Emerge did quite well at the Pro Tour overall. Of the people we drafted, our team did quite well with that. And,
I see. It was also hotly contested, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was interesting. It was not a foregone conclusion by any stretch. And I am actually not claiming victory either, because we're going to kind of see how we feel in a couple weeks. And I think that'll be a true test. But at that moment, we were both pretty high on the deck, and I think the deck performed. So
yeah, and I do think that's a common, you'll see this cycle with these draft formats, right? Where, you and I had done enough drafts to start to explore some of the archetypes, and 2 of the headliners, were the blue-red and the blue-green decks. And as you go through the blue-green decks, well, it's natural to explore the cards that have the word emerge on them, either the actual emerge cards or cards like Foul Emissary that say, well, if you emerge this, something happens. And you're like, well, hey, I'll go all in and just see what happens, right? People weren't taking those cards early, and you and I separately and then together were like, okay, yeah, this is real. Like this deck's very powerful. And a day before the Pro Tour, that's incredibly valuable information, because that means that we've kind of vetted that and know some of the cards that don't look that good, and they end up being that good. But as the format develops, now that we're sort of in the aftermath and that things are more known, we've done a couple of podcasts, and certain truths are starting to pop up. It could very easily be that type of deck slinks down a bit, because now we're not the only person in it. And if there's 2 people, it might not support 2 people at a table. Maybe you need all those pieces to make that deck great. Or maybe people realize something else, like, hey, these emerge creatures are just good. I'm just going to play them. right? Where you're not segregating them out into, okay, well, this is for the emerge deck and this is for a regular blue deck. Now you're just like, give me those wretched Gryphs. I don't care if I'm emerging or, not, or if I'm hard casting it, or if I'm just going to sacrifice some random creature to it that's not a foul emissary. These type of things happen all the time. And then that can absolutely change. So, as we move forward, we'll be keeping tabs on it and keeping an eye on it. But the other thing that'll pop up in some of the stuff we're going to talk about from here are the subtleties, right? That there's little things that we're learning. There's little cards that are being nudged up and down on our pick orders and our thought scale and our scales in our head, about, well, this one's actually a little better than we thought. Or, oh, did you know that if you do this with this card and there's all these little things that jump up and we're going to be hitting up on some of that here too. So first one is Ironclad Slayer.
So Ironclad Slayer is interesting because it's actually a pretty pushed rate on this effect. Like we've seen this before for 3-mana 2/2, and Ironclad Slayer is, first of all, not only a 3/2, but it also actually returns aura or equipment, whereas the Auramancer only got auras back. Mm-hmm. So this is priced to move, and there are decks where this is a premium card. If you have Boon of Emrakul in specific, it's very good. It's even good with cards like Choking Restraints has the natural combo, right? Eventually you pay 5 mana to Choking Restraints.
Yep.
And then you also have things like you put a spontaneous mutation or a Choking Restraints in their creature and they just sack it to emerge. That's the drawback of those cards.
Yep.
Ironclad Slayer kind of gets you out of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, and you've even got Bonds of Faith, which is a card that's already kind of high risk, high reward, but having a card like Ironclad Slayer, if they do kill your creature, can help you recoup some of that.
Yeah, I mean, Faith Unbroken's already great, but this makes
sorry, did I say Bonds of Faith? Yeah, Faith Unbroken.
You did, but I was trying to smoothly transition into the next one.
It was one of those ones where when it came out of my mouth, I'm like, I know that's a Magic card. What was that from Original Shadows or from
Original Stride? Yeah, that was Pacifism or +2/+2.
Yeah. So. Well, I guess it would work for that too. But anyway,
it's great. Yeah. Ironclad Slayer Bonds of Faith is a great combo. I would take my next casual tournament.
Oh, stop.
Innistrad block constructed.
Yeah, we broke it. But yeah, Ironclad Slayer is sweet.
Yeah, it's a card I think that I'm willing to take speculatively a little early, especially if I'm black-white for sure.
I agree.
But even if I'm not, and I think should be higher in people's estimations even later.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a card that I've had my eye on since the beginning and has performed, anywhere from well to very well, depending on if it's buying stuff back.
Lunarch Mantle is another one. So
yeah, we need to talk about Lunarch.
Okay, I maintain from the beginning, both you and I are going to play against way more Lunarch Mantles than we're going to put in our decks. That being said, I think the card is actually playable.
Okay, so where do you like it then? That's the question.
You have to be aggressive. It's really good in an aggressive deck where you just drop it early, and if they don't have an answer, they're in a lot of trouble. And yeah, there's other cards that have been like that before that aren't that good. The difference is because Lunarch Mantle can gain flying, it's also a pretty sick top deck really late in the game where it doesn't matter that you're sacking permanents, you just want to hit them for 5 in the air.
Yeah, and you're just punching through the last chunks of damage.
It acts as a very good finisher while having the ability to steal games early. The combination of those two is actually enough to make me get over the fact that it's an aura. Like I said, I don't think we're going to be first in line to be playing this card, but I have to respect its power.
I agree. That's where I'm at it too. I don't plan on playing it very much. I still don't think it's very good. I certainly don't think it's a high pick. I don't think it's a thing that you need to prioritize. I think of it as kind of like a super combat trick, right? Like a very good combat trick that you would want to have in your deck, but that you don't need to go out. You're not opening up a pack and you're like, oh, but man, there's a Lunarch Mantle here. I can't pass it. You're like, no, it's okay. Pass it. It'll probably come back or you'll get one later. Cards like that I don't have to prioritize. But the truth is, I agree with you. I do think that you can put it in some decks, especially if you're trying to beat down, but just don't put it in your slow or medium deck. I really feel like you can find a better slot for that. Almost any creature is better at that point. But, if you're looking to try to get in there early, also one other word of note about Lunarch Mantle is be willing to side it out. If your opponent is playing a bunch of, drag unders and unsubstantiates and stuff, or even just cheap, other types of choking restraints and stuff like that, just take it out. You don't need to take on all that extra risk just because, you started it off in your deck. It's fine to start it there if you want, but just be willing to sideboard it out if shown enough cards that it makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a fine card.
One last point on it too, by the way, is I've heard a lot of people say, they'll be like, put it on my 2/2, attack you for 4. Okay, I got in for 4. And then you're like, untap Drag Under. and they're like, okay, crap. And then, like I'll poke them on the shoulder and say, see, that card sucks. And they'll be like, well, it got me in for 4 damage. And it's like, okay, that is true. Like, my point isn't, okay, well, it's 0. Like the card isn't a complete 0, but that is not worth a card. No way that's worth a card, right? Like sorcery speed, pump spell or whatever. Like, not that that's the peak of it. It's just you should be very disappointed if you go Lunarch Mantle and your opponent goes Island Dragunder. You should be like, crap. This is really bad for me. I just spent a bunch of tempo and a card and my opponent, equalized all of that out. That's really bad for you. Don't think, well, at least I got in for 4. Like, no, that's a disaster. And if it's going to be happening, you should certainly take it out.
Ooh, I'll let you run point on the next one.
Yeah, I was already kind of stepping up on the on the soapbox. I may as well just stand full on it. Blood Mist. Man, I don't like this card, dude. I really don't. And this is a really interesting one. And the reason I wanted to talk about it was because the rankings on this, like I talked to a bunch of the pros, and it's all over the place. Some of the teams think it's bad and they don't like it. Some teams think it's pretty good. Some teams think it's great. Like, just like, oh no, it's very good. You always play it, that kind of thing. I am definitely down on this card. I do think that there's decks that want it. I just think that they don't come up very often. And what you want is the highest power level creatures you can get. Your Brazen Wolves are your absolute all-stars with this type of card. The difference between 3 and 4 is huge. The difference between 2 and 3 is huge. Also, you can play it if you've got a bunch of small evasive threats that are likely to get through in the air. I think that that's a good place for them as well, where you can pile on enough damage where it actually does change the racing. You're denying your opponent draw steps by closing out the game quicker. But in like your average red deck, your average mid-range deck, I really hate Blood Mist. And, the comparison that I've come up with for it, just as like a, ask yourself this question type of thing is, what if it was a 3/4 for 4? Vanilla.
Like just vanilla, right? It's your like, what if on turn 4 or 5 or whenever you were casting Blood Mist, you just played a 3/4?
Yeah, you just played a 3/4. And just run that exercise for me as you're playing against it and playing with it. And I think what you'll see is that when you're on offense, basically when you're the one who's beating down, Blood Mist can be better for sure. It's quicker. It also has a more unique effect that can be, that can pile on a lot of damage in sort of this hasty kind of way. And that counts. That is a plus side for Blood Mist. But I also think that playing a 3/4 on that same turn would often put you in a good, solid position to win the game if you were the beatdown as well. And the thing, of course, everybody knows what I'm going to say here is, what about when you're behind? What about when you're behind? You just don't get to plan out every game for being ahead. That's not how limited magic works. Almost all the decks you draft are going to be some variation of a mid-range deck, and you will have mana problems or not draw enough creatures, or your opponent kills your first 2 things, or they 2-for-1 you, God forbid, with a Savage Alliance or something like that, and you're behind. You're the one who's taking hits of 4 each from a wolves, or 3 damage from from some 3-drop creature or whatever it is. And you draw or play Blood Mist and it's dead. It's completely dead. And now sub in the vanilla 3/4 for 4. Again, not a great card. Like, this isn't uncommon as well. It's just whatever, just a 3/4. And all of a sudden you're in a position where you can stabilize that board. You can find a way to get back into it. So that's my argument against Blood Mist. That's why I don't like it. That's why I don't think it's a great card. But I do recognize that there are some decks that want it, and I think it goes well in those decks, and I think you should play it in those. It's just they probably don't come up as often as most people that play it think.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'm at in Blood Mist compared to you. I'm probably not as down on it as you are, because
few are.
Well, one of the things that's important to look at is, yes, it is definitely bad when you're behind, and that is a valid reason to dislike it. It's not that it takes you from winning to winning more. That's not the important part, because it does do that, but a lot of cards do that, and your hypothetical 4-mana 3/4, whatever, Giant Ape or whatever, would also do that.
Hypothetically.
But I think that the key games for Blood Mist are the games where your creature wouldn't be able to attack is a big part of it.
Yes.
Or it puts your opponent in a really bad spot where, like, instead of trading a creature, now they're either can't trade or have to trade 2 creatures.
Yes.
And there are decks where that'll happen a decent amount of the time. And Blood Mist, it's not impossible to get a card out of it, a good percentage of the time you cast it. it uses one of those super scarce slots, though. This is where I think people get in the most trouble with cards like this. And, we both preached against them way before I came on the show, and I'm sure, in a couple weeks after I've left, then that...
What the hell, man?
Cards that aren't removal spells and aren't creatures, and in a lot of ways don't affect the board, you have like 0 to 2 slots for those cards. So
that's a great point.
And
well, and along that point, by the way, is making sure you have enough creatures, period.
Right. And and you have 0 slots when you only have 12 creatures.
Yeah.
When you have 18 creatures, you can play one of these cards.
Yeah.
So,
but like, you don't want to run this with equipment and pump spells and all this other stuff, right? Like, all of those are eating into the slots and further exacerbating the problem when your opponent does kill your creatures of, I've got this blood mist and this, cultist staff or whatever, and I don't have anything to put it on, Also, there's, repeatable removal, and Anyway, I'll digress. I digress.
Yeah, basically, if you have a deck that has reasonably sized creatures and has room for a card that doesn't do either, isn't a removal spell or as a creature, then Blood Mist can be quite good.
Yeah, like, I like the werewolves. I like the 4-power creature.
With the werewolves.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Like, if you play Blood Mist and, you get like the 4/4 Trampler, the Vilden pack outcast or whatever, I mean, that is a major issue for your opponent. It really is. And that is a powerful combination, being able to give that card, double strike, especially with Trample. So, and the ability to pump it. Yeah, it does have a few slots, but I like what you said. I think that, you're going to be able to find a spot for it sometimes, but like I said, probably not as often as you think. Now you have Ingenious Scob here. What do you have to say about him? Because he's great, right?
Ingenious Scob is great, and somehow I think people don't even realize the full extent of the greatness. Ingenious Scob is closer to it's probably closer to a 3-mana 4/5 than what a lot of people think it is. That's just absurd. So I just want to say you should take Ingenious Scob early and often, and in any blue deck, it's going to be a great card.
Yeah, I agree. That card is just fantastic. Laboratory Brute. Now, you I think made mention of this earlier, right? When we were talking about the Stensia Innkeeper.
Right. That's exactly what I was referring to, which is Laboratory Brute's a 4-mana 3/3 with what looks like just a very minor ability. I think it's slightly better than that. There's enough graveyard synergies going on that I'm not I thought Laboratory Brute would be one of those cards that I would be unhappy if I put in my deck, and it turns out I'm one of those cards I'm closer to neutral on if I put in my deck. I found myself playing it more often than I thought I would. It just helps you get Delirium. It helps you mill cards like if you have, for example, a Grizzled Angler in your deck, or if you have any other card that cares about the graveyard at all, like especially in like blue-black, for example, even in blue-green because they have some Delirium cards.
Yeah, like these are all Spontaneous Mutation.
Spontaneous Mutation is a great combo with it too. Like it just does enough different things that I'm actually down to play Laboratory Brute. I would say more than half the time, which is more than I expected.
Mill Giant for life. I agree. It's come around for me. It has just enough synergies with everything. Yeah. Spontaneous Mutation.
Another card which I think people are starting to catch on to, but this is a very good removal spell. I've played against a lot of decks where it's like, oh, if they draw their Spontaneous Mutations, then I'm just gonna have so much trouble beating them. Like I've got these dorky 5-mana 4/4 type creatures. And, even Vilden Pack Outcast, the red werewolf that flips into a 5/7, it can get colded by Spontaneous Mutation. Totally. Some blue black decks can get 12 cards in their graveyard.
Yeah. You can, going back to the effects like Blood Mist and Lunarch Mantle, you can do some work against those. It's not like permanent against Blood Mist, but you're going to blank their best creature, and oftentimes they don't have another great one. If they put Lunarch Mantle on their thing, and they're like, give it flying, sack a thing, attack, and you're like, sure, no problem, Spontaneous Mutation, it's just like, oh God, that's gross, And the cool part is that, at least in the decks that I've really been happy with it, emerge decks, that kind of thing, I've had enough late game stuff that I can just wait around and, put a bunch of mana into a werewolf or emerge something and then take over from there and not really care if they end up blocking at some point. It's not like that has ended up feeling like not a huge downside.
Yeah, it's just an efficient removal spell, and I think a lot of people look at it and just don't see it in that. Like, it doesn't look like a removal spell. This looks like one of those, kind of wacky blue enchantments that sometimes pop up.
Yeah, but it performs a lot more like a removal spell. I agree. What about Make Mischief? Another, kind of weird looking removal spell.
Yeah, deal 1, make a 1/1 devil. I found that there's enough 1 toughness creatures that this this is a card I like having access to. I'm not saying I always main deck it because sometimes I'll just sideboard it instead. But when it's good, man, this card is so good.
I agree.
And I had a game where I discarded to hand size on turn 3. You know, it was just mana screwed for like another turn after that. But ended up going make mischief, kill your 2/1 flyer, block your 2/1 ground creature. And it was just like, that actually got me back into the game. Like, the card has its moments, and you can get them pretty late. You can almost always pick up a make mischief, and I like having access to exactly one.
You know, the way I like to think about it is similar to your example there, which is that ideally you can kill a 1 toughness creature and then be able to kill a 2 toughness ground creature with the devil, right? Like you kill their 2/1 flyer, they attack you with their 2/2, you block with the devil and then kill their creature. And that's powerful. And that doesn't always pop up that way, right? But if you can get either side of that, I think it's pretty good. Like, you know, even if the first half just goes to the opponent's head and you're just like, take 1, make a devil, block your 2-drop, kill your 2-drop, that's fine, you know, and then the occasional times when you get to actually kill a creature and then have the devil actually matter, right? Like really affect combat in a way. It's good. It holds its own. And then also, you know, I find that especially in the blue-red spells deck, this is the kind of card you want. Like you need as many spells as you can get. And this one is kind of like half creature, half spell, you know, for not really much of a discount, but you do what you got to do. And I think it's fine.
Cryptolith Fragment is the next card, and this is so kind
cool.
of it's a very confused card.
Yes,
it's a 3 mana card that fixes for any color and ramps you, which says, okay, this sounds like a good card for a control deck, but it makes both players lose a life when you tap it, which is very much not what control decks want. And in fact, where I found this card to be much, much better is in beatdown decks. It drains your opponent for 1 every turn. You don't care a ton about the damage to yourself, and later in the game, when it can flip, it just becomes absurd.
Yes. I think this card's really cool, and it's proven pretty good for me, too.
Yeah, I think it's a real card, and just utilizing it correctly is important. Don't think this is going to be great in your control decks, though it is playable there. It is an actual aggro card.
What about Terrarian? You know, it's a pretty unassuming little artifact that I think you can put in your deck or not, but have you found that you've been putting it in your deck, you know, often or less so?
I like Terrarian a lot. It does a lot of little minor things, kind of like Laboratory Brood. It just has enough little synergies that it does what I'm looking for. It enables Delirium in decks that care about that. It's another card in your graveyard for cards like Spontaneous Mutation. It also triggers Bloodbriar, which is something that I've found to be quite useful. Like if I have Bloodbriar in my deck, I'm just playing Terrarian. Mm-hmm. Because the other thing is, most limited decks, your mana is not really great. I mean, even like the normal 10-7 or 9-8 configuration, like still pretty easy to draw 3 of one type and 0 of the other, and Terrarian really helps with that.
Yeah, you know, I like to look at how many double mana symbol cards I have as well. If I've got 2 or 3, Terrarian's kind of a no-brainer, because it's just like you said, sometimes even in that scenario, you can draw 3 of one of the other, and still not be able to cast one of those spells. And you know, Terrarian is pretty light on the weight, right? It's not completely free because it does enter the battlefield tapped, so you kind of tie up a card in it basically for a turn cycle, but it just doesn't bite you quite often enough to make it so that you don't want to play it. And like you said, even with like a Bloodbriar, I'm quite happy to just run a Terrarian in my deck.
Yeah, the costs, there's 2 big costs here. One is that it comes into play tapped, so like you said, you have to wait a turn. The other is that you have to pay a mana, which, when you're curving out, is a real drawback, but the upsides you get from it are pretty big. Yeah,
I like it. Midnight Scavengers you have here.
This is one of the better black commons, which actually kind of just speaks more to where black is than where Midnight Scavengers is, with something we're going to get to. But I just have to note that the meld thing is just incredibly real. And when I have Midnight Scavengers, I will take Graph Rats, because when you meld them, it is just, I mean, it's usually just game over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it happens, well, I wasn't really sure how often I thought it would happen, but it happens a lot.
Like, yeah, it's definitely, like the fact that the cards are designed to, the Scavengers goes and picks up the rats that have died previously makes it so much more likely. But if you can get these 2 cards together, it's not that unreasonable to just, smash them with your gigantic menace, giving all your other creatures +1/+0 menace creature.
Right. There was a few Shadows over Innistrad cards that you wanted to touch on as well, like Humble the Brute.
Yeah, just a couple really brief notes. Humble the Brute just got better because there are more 4-power creatures around between the werewolves and the emerge cards. This is a card I would always main deck now. Spectral Shepherd. It's going to be pretty obvious when you want this card, but blue-white is better now, and there are a lot more spirits. So, or at least that's what it's felt like. I guess I haven't looked at the exact numbers of spirits, but I have liked Spectral Shepherd a lot. And then Survive the Night, just these couple white cards. I don't know why the white cards jumped out at me, but Survive the Night, for those of you who don't remember what those do, is a +1/+0, indestructible on a creature, and then you get a clue.
Yeah.
It's a 3-mana trick, which we've normally not really liked that much, but the format has slowed down a little bit, and 3-mana tricks are not as bad as they would be. So I like Survive the Night in this one.
Especially when they give you a card back, right?
Right.
Yeah, gets it closer to that Confront the Unknown level. Yeah, the cards that I wanted to mention real quick too, not specific, but cards like Topplegeist. Like, I found that like with the the Mill Giant, you can get quite a few cards in your graveyard pretty quickly with some of these cards if you're willing to do it. There's also the Grizzled Angler, and they can get you if you have the right composition of deck to Delirium pretty quickly, and those type of cards can really go up. The Topplegeist, kind of the payoff cards from Shadows for getting Delirium. And then also, this is a little bit more of a general note, but uncommons, right? Like, it's funny just because there's some kind of narrow uncommons from Shadows over Innistrad that, like, I feel like they just slip people's minds sometimes. In the earlier stages, they're focused on the EMN cards, and even the good players will just be like, I'm not going to play around it. Like, it was 1 pack, it's an uncommon. They probably don't have it. But I find that they have definitely, a lot of these uncommons have done quite well for me. Cards like Silver Strike and that kind of thing where it's like, do they have it? I don't know. And then they just go and you're like, gotcha. Have jumped up a bit too. So make sure that if you're going to be playing a lot of the format, make sure you brush up on those Shadows uncommons. And, you don't want to overreact to the possibility that they could be there. It is very real that it is only 1 pack and that it is uncommon, but you should at least be aware of the possibility. If you just run in and just go, oh my God, I totally forgot that card existed. That's probably on you, rather than your opponent.
That certainly makes those cards better.
Yeah.
Because cards that
They're
are
just
easy to play around get better when there are fewer of them in the format, and therefore it becomes less correct to play around.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because it works against players that aren't as good because they just forget or have no idea. And it works against players that are good because they all like deduce that they shouldn't play around it, which I think is funny. One last point here. We've kind of got our winner for worst color in the format, Luis.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like black has taken that role. For most of the people that I've talked to have come to that same conclusion. Black
is not only the worst color, but I think it's by a decent margin. Like, we're not talking about Battle for Zendikar green here because
that is important.
Hopefully we never talk about that again because that was something else.
Yeah, but that was something.
And black is draftable, but I have 2 main problems with black. One is that it's pretty shallow at the common level, and the best commons aren't even that good. Like, the best black commons are like Olivia's Dragoons, Midnight Scavengers, and Boon of Emrakul. Mm-hmm. And those cards are just not that good compared to, Wretched Griffin and Genius Scob in blue, or even like something like Ulvenwald Captive in green. Like, those cards are just better. So you're going to end up having worse cards at the common level, and I think partially as a result, if you look at the 2 color combinations, there just aren't that many with black that I really want to play.
Yeah.
I'm fine playing black red. I think that's the best deck. It's got Madness in both sets, pretty heavily supported. So the Vampire/Madness deck does work out.
Yeah.
Blue-black is just not much of a deck.
God, it just they wanted it to be, right? Like, it's supposed to be the zombies graveyard deck, and it isn't.
Yeah, I think it just never got there.
Agreed.
Black-green is fine, but not great, and it lost a lot of the punch that it had in set 1 because there are just fewer Delirium cards, and that's a lot of what it's doing.
Yeah.
And then black-white never really had like a firm identity either.
Yeah, the only deck I've been happy with in black-white is the Ironclad Slayer deck, the one where you get the boons and you get the 2 different removal enchantments from white, and then you get 2 or 3 Slayers, and now you've got a little engine. But even then, those are still just good cards working together, right? It's good synergies, but it's not a coherent archetype. It's just 1-2 punches everywhere.
Right. So black has just like got kind of like a lack of good cards and just ends up not being an integral part in a lot of decks. So where that leads is, well, first of all, you don't really want to get into black, but sometimes you open a card like Murder. That's actually the card that kind of prompted this discussion. It's like, Murder's a great card. I mean, it's a very solid card. Under normal circumstances, if I just told you this card's in the limited format, you'd be pretty happy to first pick this card.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, I still will first pick the card a lot of the time I see it. But when you look at the tiers of where Murder is compared to some of the other premium uncommons and commons, I kind of give Murder a penalty because it's a double black card.
That's funny. So you said you will still first pick it because its power level is so strong, even though it's double black. So, that's another way we can kind of tease out where you really feel about how low it is. Because, here on LR, like we're about getting into the details, right? Like we're not going to come on and be like, well, black's the worst color, move on, right? Like there's a huge gap between black being the worst color in this set, and then as you compared earlier, green in Battle for Zendikar, right? And so this does help us sort of gauge, well, he's still willing to take, and by the way, we saw Owen Turnwald first pack one, pick one Murder at the Pro Tour on day 2 as well.
Yeah, again, it's definitely a playable card, and or not even playable, like good cards. Like it kills any creature for 3 mana. That's just great in this format. But if you look at a card like Murder and compare it to a card like Sombra Old Stag, like, I think that Murder is legit better than Sombra Old Stag. I think taking Murder over Sombra Old Stag is fine. But I also think taking the Stag even over the better card, Murder, is defensible and something I'd be inclined to do.
No, I think I would too. Because I'd much rather be in green.
Or something like Lashweed Lurker. Like, Lashweed Lurker is a gold card. Normally, I would not want to first pick one of those. I'd rather take a blue-green card first pick than a black card. And not just because I like blue-green, but because Lashweed Lurker is also splashable. I think this just going to end up making your deck more often than Murder will.
Yeah. It's funny. Going back to Owen's draft as well, he ended up not playing black. Now, that was, partially due to the table and him reading the table. But also, I kind of got the vibe that he was fine moving off of black. It is very committing. I am curious. Let's just say you first pick Murder. What color composition would you guess your final deck looks like? Like, are you primarily black, or is black your secondary color by a lot? Like, is it a 10-7 mana base? Like, what are you looking at there?
Well, that's why Murder in particular is tough because
it's double. Because
black's so shallow, a lot of the time you're going to end up with, 6 to 10 black cards in your deck. So you're looking at like a 10-7 with 7 swamps. And Murder plays fine off 7 swamps.
Yeah, you're going to play it.
You can cast it on turn 6 or whatever, and it's fine. But overall, Murder just brings that awkward question to the forefront. It's just hard to get enough good black cards to want to play, 9-10 swamps in your deck.
Yeah. Sometimes
you'll get there, but a lot of the times you're still like, well, I'm blue-black, but I just have, 15 blue cards and 8 black cards. So, you're not really able to play, 9-10 swamps as easily as you could otherwise.
Yeah. And if you do, that means that you've got more black cards and your deck's probably not as good. All right. Well, good stuff, man. I think that, part of the fun that we get to have on the show is keeping up on these formats. And this is one way we can do it. We can touch in on certain cards. We'll be going deeper on archetypes as well once we have that fully fleshed out. I'm feeling pretty solid now and there. But, when you start writing it down, you start to realize, I actually haven't drafted black-green that much yet, or, whatever. And maybe I'll hop on and try to figure out what's going on, or just pay attention to what my opponents are doing. But we'll, of course, be doing that as we move through this format, which, by the way, I really like. The format.
Oh yeah, the format is a lot of fun. It's too early to tell. It's just funny saying that, 20 to 25 drafts in, whatever it is. It's funny because I think I'm 30 drafts in, but I think a bunch of those drafts, I was either distracted or missed a bunch of picks. So I guess I'm just not counting them.
Yeah,
wasn't my fault.
Distracted. Yeah, exactly. All right.
But I think I like this more than Shadows.
Oh, I do. I'm locking that in already.
And Shadows was a format I did enjoy drafting. So
yeah, it was fun.
That bodes well.
Yeah, to me, it's all about the werewolves, man. I just think they really did a good job with this.
Yeah, those are fun.
Okay, that is going to do it for the show this week. First, I want to remind you that Limited Resources is brought to you by channelfireball.com. Please do check out their website. They really do a great job supporting the show and helping us out with anything that we happen to need. And we'd appreciate it if you would check out their website the next time you're in the market for something magic related. And if you're not at the moment, you can still go there and get free content. It's free. It's 100% free. They don't charge for their stuff. You can watch videos. You can read articles by some of the best players in the whole world over on Channel Fireball. Also, you can find us on social media. I am Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. That's right. You can find links to our streams. I stream sometimes. Luis streams even more often than I do. You don't want to miss it. Really good fun on Luis's stream. You can also check out our YouTube page. We've got some cool stuff, and I've been working hard at, getting even more neat stuff up there for you guys. I'll be recording the depth check draft at some point here in the near future and start editing that down. That's something that we hit as a milestone goal on the Patreon as well. This is just more of the cool perks that we get. But of course, everybody gets to enjoy that. Those are up on the YouTube page for Limited Resources there. You can subscribe and check that out while you're there. Next week, I got a GP this weekend. I'll be moving next week probably, but whatever. We'll find time to make a show. And we'll see you then.
So since this is the show right after the Pro Tour, I do want to share a very funny story that shows the true determination and heart that Limited Resources listeners can really identify with. And apologies if you've heard the story already, if you watched Paul Cheon's Chlog, but it is a great story, and I do have to share it. So we show up for day 2 of the Pro Tour. I was 7-1 and Paul was 6-2. We draft our decks. My deck was really bad. Paul's deck was also really bad. We play our first round. I lose. I go over to find out how Paul did, and he looked like he was dying. He was like slumped over on a table and with his head in his hands. I was like, dude, what happened? And it turned out he got food poisoning. And we think it was from the muffin he ate in the morning.
A nefarious muffin.
Yeah, the poison chocolate chip muffin. And he was literally like throwing up during his round. Like he would have to get up from the table, go throw up in the bathroom, and come back.
God, that poor guy. And
he just looked like he couldn't even function. He goes to play round 2. He loses that round. And at this point, I actually was able to watch part of his match because I finished my match quickly. I walk over and he's got his hand face down on the table, his hand of cards. He's like slumped over, and every turn he just like looks at his top card and either puts it into play or puts it into his hand. Like
wow.
That's what he does. And he just like
he's just barely hanging on.
Yeah, he looks so bad. He doesn't even look at what his opponent is doing. Like his opponent's saying like attack you, and Paul's like block or take it or whatever. And Paul loses. I don't know if he would have won these matches otherwise, but his deck was very bad, or because his deck was very bad. But the way he was playing, like he had to be losing like a solid 10%, if not more, per match, just based on the fact that he was really no longer like making like informed decisions. He was just playing his cards in the worst possible manner, right? So, I sat with him after that round. Again, if you watch his video log, his log, I actually started filming at that point, saying like, "Sorry guys, Paul just can't make it, but I'm going to take over filming from here."
I'll put the link in the show notes, by the way. For
you should watch it. It's really the whole. If you are interested in what the whole experience is like, it's a really fun show. Paul makes me look a little bit more mean than I think I really am, just based on how he edited it. But
please, God.
So Paul, I'm taking over the filming at this point. Paul is just lying down. He's like, I can't make it. I've got to drop. I just cannot play. But at this point, pairings go up. So he goes over, and it's like, it's too late. You can't drop. Pairings are already. And Paul's just like, whatever. I'm just going to go concede to my opponent, and then I'm going to leave. I just can't play. He goes over and is just like, whatever. I'll play my round. It's like my opponent's already sitting there. Like, at the end of the day, I'm 6-4 in a Pro Tour. I just feel so much worse if I just drop from the PT. So he plays his round. He wins his round. So he went 1-2 with this deck.
What a hero.
He goes back to the hotel, which is walking distance away, and sleeps for like half an hour because there's like a 50-minute lunch break. He gets whatever it was out of his system. I don't want to know through which means, but there were many. He comes back to the site, and he no longer looks like he's about to immediately die. He just looks like he's terminally ill. But he doesn't look like
which is a vast improvement.
In the act of dying. He wins his next round, wins his next round, loses round 15, wins round 16, and finishes 18th in the Pro Tour.
Unbelievable.
And it was awesome. Like
what a sicko.
Paul's just one of my like closest friends, and I just like my heart was breaking watching him drop, say he was going to drop. I actually told a bunch of people, yeah, Paul dropped, because that's what he said he was going to do when we were left to go to our round. And it was just, and then to find out that he finished 18th at the Pro Tour after dropping, like going to drop from the tournament, like asking if he could be dropped is I don't know. I think that's just like,
that's incredible.
A pretty incredible accomplishment, and kind of the fighting spirit I love to see. So that was a really cool story.